Kung Fu wasn't just a television series, it was a cultural phenomenon that blended philosophy, action, and Eastern wisdom into something truly unique. At the heart of it all was a quiet, wandering monk who taught audiences that strength could come through peace. But while the show left a lasting legacy, the real-life stories of its cast members were not without tragedy. Behind the stoic faces and spiritual lessons were actors who struggled, persevered, and in some cases, left this world far too soon. In this tribute, we remember the stars of Kung Fu who have passed away, reflecting on their contributions to a groundbreaking show and the real-life battles they faced beyond the screen. David Carradine was born on December 8, 1936, in Hollywood, California, into a family already fractured by fame. His father, actor John Carradine, drifted in and out of his life like a ghost on stage, while his mother struggled to hold the family together. Chaos was David's first language. Divorces, custody battles, and a sense of not belonging would follow him into every chapter of his life. As a child, he bounced between homes, schools, and identities. The instability carved deep emotional grooves into his psyche. He found temporary solace in music and drawing, but acting, like a double-edged sword, became both his refuge and curse. Trained in theater but seduced by television, Carradine found overnight fame playing the soft-spoken, enigmatic monk Kwai Chang Caine in Kung Fu, 1972 to 1975. On screen, he was disciplined, philosophical, and kind. Off-screen, he was tortured, plagued by substance abuse, erratic behavior, and an ever-present sense of disconnection from reality. David's career was a maze of brilliant moments and self-sabotage. He was fired from stage roles, walked out on films, and clashed with directors. His talent was undeniable, but so was his volatility. While the public saw a spiritual hero on TV, Carradine battled addiction and depression in hotel rooms and late-night bars, where the glow of celebrity couldn't warm him. His marriages, 5 in total, were brief sanctuaries that turned into battlegrounds. He longed for connection, but his demons were louder than love. He had children, but guilt for being an absent father shadowed his every smile. Hollywood never gave him the respect he craved, and he sabotaged many of the few chances he had at redemption. On June 3, 2009, David Carradine was found dead in a Bangkok hotel room. The official cause, accidental asphyxiation, though the truth remains clouded by mystery and whispers. He was 72. His net worth at death was estimated at $500,000, a haunting number for a man who had once touched millions but died alone, misunderstood, and searching, as if still wandering the deserts of Kung Fu, trying to find peace in a world that never offered him any. Kai Luk was born on June 18, 1904, in Guangzhou, China, and brought to the United States as a boy. His family settled in Seattle, where the immigrant experience carved itself into every corner of their lives. Poverty and racial exclusion were constants. Kai's father died young, forcing him to shoulder responsibilities far too soon, and even as a child, he understood what it meant to be invisible in a country that never saw him as one of its own. Before acting, he was an artist. His early work graced movie posters and studio backdrops, but the call of the screen lured him toward a spotlight that was rarely kind to Asian actors. He broke barriers in the 1930s as number one son in the Charlie Chan series and later as Kato in the Green Hornet, but he was often typecast, his heritage used to limit rather than elevate him. In Kung Fu, 1972 to 1975, Luke portrayed Master Pe, the blind, gentle teacher whose wisdom guided Kwai Chang Caine. Audiences saw serenity and grace. But off-screen, Kai battled the anguish of being a trailblazer in an industry that never fully embraced him. He was often praised but rarely given center stage, always respected yet subtly dismissed. The dignity he exuded on screen was a mirror of the restraint he practiced in life, where racism was endured silently and dreams were tucked behind duty. His career spanned decades, yet the roles never grew in depth. He smiled for cameras, gave polished interviews, but those closest to him knew of his sadness. A man quietly grieving for the roles he could have played, for the recognition that never fully arrived. His inner life was a careful balancing act between gratitude and quiet disappointment. Kai Luke was married to Ethel Davis until her death in 1979. Their relationship was his sanctuary, one of the few areas of his life untouched by performance. They had no children, and in his final years he spent long hours alone, painting again, returning to the one form of expression that never betrayed him. On January 12, 1991, Kai Luke died of a stroke in Whittier, California, at the age of 86. His net worth at the time was estimated at $400,000. In the end, the man who played the teacher of peace left behind a legacy of quiet courage and unspoken wounds, proof that some of the greatest strength lies not in fighting, but in enduring. Philippon was born on March 29, 1905, in Los Angeles, California, an American child with Korean blood in a land that didn't want either to belong to the other. His father, Do-sin On Chong-ho, was a revered Korean independence activist, and the weight of that legacy fell on Philip's shoulders from an early age. But in America, that legacy bought him little, except suspicion, exclusion, and the loneliness of being between worlds. As a boy, Philip watched his parents struggle to keep their family afloat while being surveilled and ostracized for political activism. At school, he was mocked for his features. At home, he was expected to carry his father's mission forward. The split between identity and duty left Philip with a deep reservoir of quiet resilience. He turned to film not for fame, but for expression, yet even there, he found barriers. Hollywood offered him roles, but never respect. He was often cast as the villain, the traitor, or the background, rarely the hero. Yet he kept working, head down, determined to change what he could from the inside. His breakthrough came late in life, as Master Ken in Kung Fu, 1972 to 1975, a figure of wisdom, grace, and quiet strength. But it was a role drawn from his own life. Master Ken's calm exterior was not a performance, it was survival. Privately, On endured the pain of being perpetually typecast, knowing he had the talent but not the skin color Hollywood wanted. He aged without bitterness but with sorrow, watching younger actors repeat the same struggle he had fought decades earlier. His personal life remained guarded. He never married, never had children. Some say it was by choice, others that he simply never found someone who could share the weight he carried. He owned a restaurant later in life, one of the few places where he felt fully in control, serving food and kindness to customers who often didn't even know who he was. It was there, in the quiet repetition of ordinary life, that he found a measure of peace. Philippon died on February 28, 1978, of complications from surgery, just 1 month shy of his 73rd birthday. His net worth was estimated at $300,000. Though the industry never gave him the lead roles he deserved, his legacy whispers in every Asian American actor who walks a path he cleared, not with applause, but with patience. Albert Salmi was born on March 11, 1928, in Brooklyn, New York, the son of poor Finnish immigrants. His childhood was steeped in silence and struggle. His father worked long hours, often disappearing into the grind of factory life, while his mother battled illness. Poverty clung to the family like winter in Finland, endless and biting. Albert retreated inward, a boy who rarely smiled, burdened by a sense of being out of place in every room he entered. He found acting by accident, through the GI Bill after serving in the military. But once on stage, something awakened. His intensity was magnetic, raw, truthful, unfiltered. Yet that same intensity haunted him off stage. Salmi refused to play Hollywood's game, often turning down big-budget films in favor of stage work or obscure television roles. His portrayal of Rafe in the Kung Fu Pilot, 1972, was a small but powerful performance, layered, brooding, and laced with an anger that felt all too real. Beneath his performances was a man always boiling beneath the surface. Salmi's career never reached the heights it could have, not because he lacked talent, but because he couldn't bend. He had no interest in fame, and it cost him dearly. Directors found him difficult. Studios stopped calling. As the years passed, he faded into character roles, then into near obscurity. His personal life mirrored his career, turbulent and increasingly dark. He married actress Peggy and Garner, but their union dissolved under the weight of Salmi's mood swings and emotional isolation. His second marriage to Roberta Pollock Taper ended in even greater tragedy. Albert, long struggling with depression, became increasingly volatile in his later years, retreating from the world and losing touch with his daughters. On April 22, 1990, Albert Salmi and his estranged wife Roberta were both found dead in their Spokane, Washington home, victims of an apparent murder-suicide. Salmi was 62. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at just $100,000. Though his name has been largely forgotten by the industry he once challenged, his life remains a sobering portrait of a man whose refusal to compromise became both his badge of honor and the weight that crushed him. Kim Chan was born on December 28, 1917, in Guangdong, China, and emigrated with his family to the United States as a child during a time when Chinese faces were either erased or mocked. They settled in New York City's Chinatown, where the narrow alleys echoed with dreams too small for the sky. His father worked menial jobs to feed a family that never quite caught up with the American promise. The boy who would one day be seen on screen as the wise Ping Hai spent his youth feeling invisible in a country that never looked his way. Kim's early life was one of grinding silence. English came slowly, money even slower. He took what jobs he could, dishwasher, delivery boy, doorman, carving out a life with his head down, until the whisper of acting caught him in middle age. He didn't have youthful good looks or charisma that charmed rooms. What he had was presence, carved from years of being overlooked. When he appeared in Kung Fu, 1972 to 1975, as Ping Hai, a mentor figure with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, he wasn't pretending. He was simply drawing from the deep well of his own survival. But his career never soared. Roles were scarce for older Asian men, and the ones offered were often drenched in cliché. Kim took them anyway, not for fame, but for dignity. He carried every line with gravity, even when the scripts did not. Though he would later appear in major films, The Fifth Element, Lethal Weapon 4, he remained on the margins, always known but never celebrated. Privately, Kim Chan was a solitary man. He never married, had no known children. Friends described him as warm, soft-spoken, and deeply reflective, haunted by the roles he could never play, the life he might have led if he'd been born in a different time. In interviews, he smiled with humility, but there was always something distant in his eyes, as though a part of him had never stopped wandering. On October 5, 2008, Kim Chan died in Brooklyn at the age of 90. The cause was undisclosed, though those close to him say his health had quietly faded. His net worth at the time of death was estimated at $200,000. In the end, Kim Chan was not a star, but a presence, subtle, steady, and sorrowful, a man who made peace with being overlooked, even as his quiet strength lingered long after the lights went out. Alexander Fu Xing was born on October 20, 1954, in Hong Kong, the ninth of 11 children in a struggling family where joy was often a luxury. His father, once wealthy, lost everything in a business collapse, plunging the family into hardship. Amid the noise of siblings and the silence of loss, Fu Xing grew up restless, searching for a way out, a place to shine. He found it briefly in the world of martial arts cinema. At just 18, Fu Xing was discovered by Shaw Brothers Studio, where his charisma, boyish smile, and raw athleticism made him an instant star. He embodied a new kind of kung fu hero, playful, rebellious, flawed, mirroring the emotional turbulence beneath his charming surface. His rise was meteoric, and his performances in classic martial arts films like the Brave Archer series won him fans across Asia. In 1973, he appeared in a guest role on Kung Fu, where his youthful energy crackled against the more meditative tone of the show. But beneath the fame, he was unraveling. Fu Xing was plagued by injury and inner torment. He threw himself into stunt work recklessly, suffering repeated accidents that fractured both body and spirit. Fame became a double-edged sword. He craved it but felt suffocated by it. His marriage to actress Jenny Sang was passionate but volatile. Rumors of infidelity, fights, and emotional distance haunted them. Behind the camera, Fu Xing was known to brood, to drink, to lash out in frustration, haunted by an unshakable feeling that he was burning too fast, too young. He once confided to a friend, "I don't think I'll live long." It wasn't melodrama. It was prophecy. On July 7, 1983, at just 28 years old, Fu Xing was killed in a car crash in Hong Kong. He had been sitting in the passenger seat of his Porsche when it struck a concrete pole. His death sent shockwaves through the film world. His net worth at the time was estimated at $1 million, an empire he never had time to enjoy. Fu Xing lived like a flame, brilliant, defiant, and destined to flicker out too soon. His tragedy was not just his death, but how deeply he seemed to sense it was coming, and how powerless he felt to stop it. John Fujioka was born on June 29, 1925, in Hawaii, to Japanese immigrant parents who worked long hours in sugar plantations, barely making ends meet. He grew up in a nation that would soon turn on his heritage, where his face, his name, and his language would be seen as threats. When World War II broke out, he wasn't yet a soldier, but already a survivor, learning how to walk in a world that watched him with suspicion. The shadow of internment camps loomed over his youth, though his Hawaiian birthplace spared him from imprisonment. Still, racism carved its place in his memory. As he moved into adulthood, Fujioka gravitated toward acting, not for fame, but as a means of reclaiming the narratives written against people who looked like him. He knew he would be offered roles as the wise old man, the monk, the enemy soldier, and he took them, but each time he added a sliver of dignity, a flicker of soul. He appeared in Kung Fu in 1973, playing a series of calm, layered characters, cooks, lamas, sages, all roles that demanded serenity from a man who had weathered storms within. Fujioka rarely broke through as a lead, but his presence was always magnetic. He brought gravitas to minor parts and whispered life into roles meant to be background noise. But beneath the composed exterior, there was weariness, of being cast as the same archetype, of having to constantly prove he was more than just a look. Fujioka never spoke much about his private life. He married but kept his family out of the public eye, possibly to shield them from the scrutiny he endured. Friends described him as introspective and kind, but distant. He poured his frustrations into quiet moments, gardening, cooking, reflecting alone in hotel rooms between filming gigs, often wondering if his work would ever be more than just a footnote. He died on December 13, 2006, in Los Angeles at the age of 81. His net worth was estimated at $250,000, modest, considering a career spanning decades. Yet his true wealth was in the legacy he left, a blueprint of endurance for Asian American actors who followed. Fujioka was never a star, but in every role he carried the sorrow of being seen yet never known, a man of great depth in a shallow industry, forever cast in silence. Radames Para was born on September 14, 1960, in New York City, the only child of actress Lisa Para. His father left early, a ghost in the background of a childhood shaped by financial instability and emotional uncertainty. Raised by a single mother chasing roles in a brutal industry, Radames spent his early years not in playgrounds, but on studio lots and cramped apartments, learning how to act before he learned how to simply be a child. At just 12 years old, he was cast as the young Caine in Kung Fu, 1972 to 1975, a boy monk with deep eyes and even deeper questions. His portrayal was haunting, spiritual, calm, qualities not often found in a child. But then, Radames wasn't allowed to be a normal child. The role brought him fame, but also an unbearable pressure. Off-screen, he was lonely, misunderstood, and increasingly alienated from his peers. He often said that people never saw him, only the quiet, disciplined boy they imagined from the screen. His mother managed his career, and though her intentions may have been good, her control over his life grew stifling. Radames drifted from role to role, never fully finding his place. As adolescence passed and the industry grew colder, the roles vanished. By the time he reached adulthood, he was adrift, another child star swallowed by the silence that follows applause. He left acting by the 1980s, retreating into a life far from the spotlight. He turned to audiovisual technology, building a quiet business installing high-end home theaters. But the shadow of his early fame lingered. Interviews later revealed a man reflective, often melancholic, mourning the childhood he never got to live and the identity he was forced to shape around a role he didn't fully understand. Though he never publicly detailed his romantic life, it's known he lived largely alone. There were no children, no great love stories in the press, just a man rebuilding himself in privacy. He admitted he still dreamed about the desert scenes, the slow steps of Cain, the silence that felt all too familiar. As of now, Radames Pera is still alive. His estimated net worth is around $300,000, built not from Hollywood, but from decades of quiet labor behind the scenes. He carries no fame now, only a quiet legacy, etched not in accolades, but in the eyes of a child monk who bore the weight of wisdom before he even had a chance to grow. Clyde Kusatsu was born on September 13, 1948, in Honolulu, Hawaii, in a nation still uneasy with its Asian sons. The grandson of Japanese immigrants, he grew up in a place where cultural identity was complicated, where being American didn't mean being accepted. His parents were quiet, dutiful, pushing him toward stability, but Clyde gravitated to the stage, where pretending to be someone else offered a brief escape from always being the other. He moved to the mainland to pursue acting, entering an industry that still trafficked in stereotypes. Roles were sparse, and when they came, they were small. Shopkeepers, soldiers, background characters in someone else's story. He knew the unspoken ceiling above his head. Still, he pressed forward, becoming a face audiences recognized, though few knew his name. In Kung Fu, 1973, Clyde appeared in multiple episodes, each time inhabiting a different Asian archetype. Han Su Lok, Lama Kampo Kushog, and others. Characters painted with dignity, yet trapped in narrow frames. What the audience never saw was the quiet rage beneath his calm performances, the exhaustion of being typecast, the frustration of navigating scripts that misrepresented his culture. Clyde fought back where he could, becoming one of the earliest Asian American actors to advocate for union representation and better roles. But the toll was internal. He once said the hardest part wasn't being rejected, it was being accepted for the wrong reasons. Marriage came early, and mercifully, it endured. Clyde found stability in his family, raising children while balancing a career that refused to fully open its arms. He juggled guest roles, TV spots, commercials, anything to keep working. He smiled on screen, but in interviews, his eyes often revealed something quieter, fatigue, and a longing for an industry that valued him as more than a face in the background. Later in life, he found more steady work, most notably in Star Trek, The Next Generation and Family Matters. Yet the great roles never came. He remained a dependable presence, never the lead. Perhaps that was the hardest part, not failure, but being perpetually almost. As of today, Clyde Kusatsu is still alive, a quiet survivor in an industry that rarely made room for men like him. His estimated net worth is around $1 million, built through sheer endurance. He remains a symbol, not of triumph, but of perseverance. The calm you saw in his characters was real, but it was earned, built on decades of waiting to be fully seen. Which character from Kung Fu, TV series 1972 to 1975, holds a special place in your heart? How does it make you feel knowing that some of the beloved cast members are no longer with us? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments below. If you've been enjoying this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching.